You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
The following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Coming in at 195 pounds from Studio A, he is the reigning, defending, undisputed host of the Ring of Thunder, Sexy Thor! So, Thunderverse, you know how every time I talk about, or have to talk about these WWE releases, which I feel like has happened about 25 times so far this year alone? Well, apparently when I say I'm tired of talking about it, WWE just takes that as, oh, okay, so we'll just give you more releases to talk about here in the very near future then. To which I say, no, I mean, when I'm tired of talking about it, it means I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's what being tired of something means. But they were just like, no, you want to talk about more releases. I'm just like, no, seriously, I just want to get on to, I don't know, because I start to plan these episodes very strangely, and you're going to see why once I get done talking about these releases, because this is a very interesting format, but it's also because I've been working so damn much and actually enjoying myself while working, which I cannot believe I'm even saying, especially considering where I'm back at, that planning this has been about as disjointed and last second as it's ever been, but, bear with me. Hopefully you like it. So, the latest batch of releases, which happened during SmackDown, I mean, not on TV, of course, because that would just be shitty, even though I wish most of these were just a shoot. Or, no, a work. I know my wrestling lingo, damn it. I worked myself into a shoot. So, WWE released, and this is all NXT talent, Bobby Fish, Bronson Reed, Jake Atlas, Ari Sterling, Kona Reeves, Leon Ruff, Stephon Smith, Tyler Rust, Zachariah Smith, Asher Hale, Giant Zangier, and Mercedes Martinez. That's it's got some pretty significant names in there. I mean, some had strictly just been in the Performance Center, but a lot of those, like Bobby Fish, he was in a storyline with Roderick Strong, and Roderick Strong just actually defeated him this past week on NXT TV. Bronson Reed had just lost the North American Championship about a month ago and seemed primed for a main roster come up. He just lost to Adam Cole about a week or so ago, which was apparently just used to kick off the build-up to Cole O'Reilly 3. By the way, Adam Cole is still set to be a free agent after SummerSlam weekend. And there were reports out there that AEW had made an offer to him, but that turned out to not be the case. And then Jake Atlas, he was doing really well as an up-and-comer, I thought, on 205 and also on NXT TV. In fact, he was a part of that new generation of 205 Live that was set to overtake the originals, who are also not even in the company anymore. Ari Sterling, and then there's Kona Reeves, who hasn't been on NXT TV in about 2 years, but he was a staple of the brand. Leon Ruff, who's a recent North American champion, except that was like a few months ago. But still, Stephon Smith was in PC. Tyler Rust was in this new faction with Roderick Strong, Diamond Mind. So no idea where that's going to go, which is a bummer because Malcolm Bivens is an awesome manager. But he's just like having the worst luck because he started off with managing Indus-Sher, and that whole thing got derailed. And then he finally got around to managing Tyler Rust, and, starting to do big things with Diamond Mine. And now Tyler Rust is gone, so who knows who and where Bivens is going to end up with. Zechariah Smith was in the Performance Center. Asher Hale was on 205 Live. Giant Zangier was a Performance Center who was featured on that Superstar Spectacle of all the Indian WWE superstars. And Mercedes Martinez, she had just been through a feud with Xia Li. It seemed like she was trying to go after Mei Ying, so who knows where that would have went. And she was the one who, made the smart career move of getting out of Retribution before the shit really hit the fan with that particular faction, and came back to NXT and had a lot of really cool matches. So it's just a damn shame. And WWE, I'm telling you, I'm tired of talking about releases. So stop. I want to talk about people getting signed now. People like the formerly known as Everrise, who are now at AEW simply as 2.0. And they teamed up with Daniel Garcia and had a 6-man tag match on Dynamite against Darby Allin, Jon Moxley, and Eddie Kingston. That's a fucking trio right there. But yeah, I want to talk about signings, not releases. Done with that stuff. And of course, there's no telling and surprisingly no speculation on how the release of Bobby Fish is, which way that's rubbing Adam Cole, because of course they were brothers in the Undisputed Era together. So I know, even though in kayfabe Adam Cole is basically like, fuck all those dudes. Like, I'm sure in real life, of course, Adam Cole and Bobby Fish, there's still a lot of love between them. Because this is how wrestling works, people. So, moving on. Well, of course, this next thing I'm talking about is both WTLK and Ring of Thunder related. It's about the Suicide Squad finally coming out in theaters. And of course, this pertains to Ring of Thunder because John Cena's in it. No way. And wow, this movie. Now, I thought I had a lot of love for the first Suicide Squad movie, and I still do to an extent. And of course, most of that being because Harley Quinn is a top-notch character, and I did like Will Smith's Deadshot and everything. But wow. And of course, I've also admitted here on this podcast that, yes, I know Suicide Squad has had a shitload of problems and is definitely not the best put together movie. But yeah, James Gunn, he really did it. He actually made a comprehensive and easy to understand Suicide Squad movie that actually flows. Not that the first one was hard to understand. At least it wasn't for me. I don't know about everybody else, but yeah, it is bonkers just in the way that James Gunn can. And I mean, I can't really compare it that much to anything pertaining to Guardians of the Galaxy, even though both are James Gunn. Like, it's still, honestly, I kind of feel like the 2016 Suicide Squad is still closer to Guardians of the Galaxy than this movie is. This is just, well, first off, again, it's still a much better made movie. And also, there's actually real stakes to this movie. But, I mean, you don't want to hear about all that. Or maybe you actually do. Because, the whole crossover between comic fans and wrestling fans. But yeah, John Cena's performance as Peacemaker, though, oh my god. Ooh. I found myself thinking several times that oh my god, I cannot wait until the Peacemaker TV show comes on HBO Max. Because James Gunn wrote it, and obviously John Cena's going to be back as Peacemaker. So, yeah, that show can only be as hilarious and as just ridiculous as the performance of Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad movie was. But yeah, Cena had me howling, I swear. And it's a good thing he landed on the big screen this week, because there was no Cena on TV at all this week, but he was in the dark matches after television and the house shows. Speaking of which, it's this Saturday. Your boy's going to Charlotte to watch WWE Super Show and hopefully see John Cena and our tribal chief. Good stuff. And when Finn Balor was on TV this weekend, he said that he has a bone to pick with John Cena and Roman Reigns. Obviously Roman Reigns, because he's like, I want that Universal Championship. And he's not overly fond of Cena just coming in and signing that contract, even though he just did that after Baron Corbin beat Finn Balor, and then Cena came in and then just beat up Corbin and then signed it. Finn still didn't appreciate it, especially because his name was still in type on the contract. And also, a whole Cena fest here. But also on the newest episode of the ID10T podcast with Chris Hardwick, John Cena returns. So if you're a fan of Chris Hardwick and a fan of Cena, it's definitely an awesome conversation. And this one was very interesting to me. I'm still like halfway through listening to it, but I was very drawn to getting back to it because, I mean, of course, not only am I a fan of John Cena, but also I remember when Cena was on ID10T, and I think this was a few years ago, so I think it was still called Nerdist, that I think Cena was on to promote Blockers, I want to say, maybe. This was like either 2017 or early 2018, and I only know it's around those years because, like I said, I only started listening to podcasts in 2017. But when I was listening to the John Cena episode, I was still working my night job at that sports apparel and sporting goods store that's across the street from DashCon, if you know what I mean. And that was before I started watching wrestling or was even considered watching wrestling, and to just hear Cena talking about wrestling in the podcast, that also just that piqued my interest, and I think it was one of the final crumbs placed in my brain before I actually made the plunge and started watching and just became a wrestling obsessor until here we are. Even though Raw just started 4 minutes ago, here I am just talking on this podcast. So, yeah, and also, goodness, I cannot believe, and you know what, maybe I should be thanking the wrestling gods for, just trying to give me these experiences that I probably should have had in the late 90s. But I think just hearing about it, and I think if I lived through it, I wouldn't have been able to believe it. But the fact that it's 2021, and we actually got Chris Jericho versus Jericho-Guerrera again in a match against each other, is blowing my mind. And honestly, me being a very recent wrestling fan, and I didn't even know who Jericho-Guerrera was until Jericho cut that one promo on MJF a couple years ago where he's like, you're the product of your parents doing it, while me and Jericho-Guerrera went at it on WCW Saturday Night. But of course later I've explored that rivalry a little bit and the kind of performer that Jericho-Guerrera is, and just with the background knowledge that I did have, I was still just like, holy shit, it's 2021 and we're actually getting this. It's a show on TNT where Chris Jericho and Jericho-Guerrera are having a match. And Sting is a part of that show, too, in some respect. I mean, I'm not going to call them WCW because I have way more respect for AEW than that. But damn. It's like, getting closure on little open-ended things about my childhood that I didn't even know I needed. But sure enough, it was great. And of course, the stipulation was Jericho could only win with a move from the top rope. So you think that man would do some sort of splash or moonsault, somersault, whatever. But no, this man did an actual Judas effect. This little spinning back elbow, jumping off the top rope. And he got the 1, 2, 3 and moves on to the next labor, which is Jericho versus Wardlow with MJF as the special guest referee. Oof. But still, ooh, man. I'm just thinking about all those people that make fun of Jericho's look because and just make little jokes about his body, because I know that happened one time when AEW came on right after some NBA games, and some dipshit fans who had straggled behind to watch some AEW after the NBA were tweeting and making fun of Jericho's body. But it's just like, motherfuckers, y'all couldn't do that Judas effect elbow from the top rope like he can, much less do a Judas effect on the damn ground. But whatever. Internet's gonna be internets, and internets is shitty. So, we'll be going to commercials, and when we get back, speaking of shitty, we'll be talking about something shitty that happened to Kiera Hogan on Impact that had me popping.
Hi everyone, it's Nathan, host of the 42 Cast. Our second season is just underway, and it's never been a better time to check in on what we're doing. Whether it's talking about the latest movies from the MCU, watching the Arrowverse shows, talking about classics such as Star Trek and Doctor Who, playing 8-bit video games, or sharing celebrity interviews, the 42 Cast has something for everyone. So give it a listen, and discover why it's the ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. The 42 Cast is a proud member of the ESO Network.
How did watchdog groups with no experience in television take a controlling interest on Saturday morning television?
When did Wonder Woman make her animated debut?
Want to know why there were 2 competing Ghostbuster shows?
How Atari changed the Saturday morning landscape?
How did networks compete over similar genres at the same time?
Find out all of this and more on the Best Saturdays of Our Lives podcast.
A proud member of the ESO Network.
Hello. Have you ever wondered how much Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster sold Superman's rights to DC for? Or which popular football star was the Sam Wilson the Falcons' physical appearance based on? You can find all that and more at the History of Comic Books podcast, a podcast dedicated to the creators, events, history, and the companies that made the great comic book medium. Hosted and created by your friendly neighborhood JT Wheatley. Please give it a listen at iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, and all our podcasting platforms. Thank you, and go ahead and enjoy yourself a good comic book.
Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals.
It's Amanda Bones.
And I'm Ashley.
Of How to Talk to Your Friend About Wrestling, the podcast on the Count Out Wrestling Podcast Network, a weekly show where we talk about all of our favorite things, babes, blood, and brutality.
We also talk about other fun things, like is Kenny Omega finally too tan? And how much blood is too much blood? Because that looks like way too much blood.
So join us on the adventure of teaching me, Amanda Bones, about wrestling.
Do you like podcasts?
Then you're gonna hate Thunder Talk.
Tasteless subject matter.
Mature humor.
Contempt for our co-hosts.
Unapologetic social views.
Edgy music.
And total irreverence for the nerd junk we love.
Are all reasons why
No one
should listen to Thunder Talk.
Find us on the ESO Network.
and all podcasting platforms.
Or don't.
Whatever.
But first, before we get to what happened to Kiera Hogan, just a little announcement that happened on Impact after a face-to-face. But Mickie James informed Deonna Purrazzo that she will be facing Melina at NWA in Empower on August 28th. And the Knockouts Championship will be on the line. So that's pretty great. And it all ties into what else is going on August 28th. And it features the person who attacked Kiera Hogan while she and Tasha Steelz were in the ring. And it was none other than Savannah Evans of Pro Wrestling Turbo, the sexy young cannibal. The one that was involved, I believe, in the triple threat with our friend Mad Dog Josh Powers and Wheeler Yuta. I might have had that wrong. If so, I apologize, friends. But I know she was involved in one of the triple threats during last month's PWT Grand Prix, too. But holy shit, I popped when she showed up and attacked Kiera, and I was like, oh my god, Tasha is just standing there and letting her attack her. I mean, then again, I wouldn't really be trying to jump in there because I've seen Savannah Evans in the ring up close and personal, and she is incredible, so she can go beat anybody's ass. And she will be coming up on August 28th on Pro Wrestling Turbo Overdrive. And the card so far is as follows. Patrick Scott versus Joshua Cutshaw in the main event for the Pro Wrestling Turbo Championship. Selena Rose versus the previously mentioned Savannah Evans. A last man standing match between Big Game James and Fluffman. Really got to get that pronunciation. And of course, it spawned off that 6-man tag match when it was Buff and Fluff and Bojack versus Big Game James and Chance Riser and Donnie Ray. And then there's a To the Moon ladder match. And apparently the winner of the ladder match gets like a piece of Bitcoin. Dude, that's what the poster says. I'm just going with it. And then a career-threatening match. Will Dean Richards go 0-10 facing BK Westbrook? I believe it's Dean Richards that is the one on the verge of going 0-10. But if he does go 0-10, then he will be eliminated from the Pro Wrestling Turbo roster. Dun, dun, dun. Good stuff, though. Cannot wait. The show will be starting again August 28th at 3 o'clock. And doors will open at 2. It's at the Spinning Jenny in Greer. And there will be a Mexibilly food truck there, along with beer and wine and other spirits. So definitely come on out for a rollicking good time. You can pre-buy tickets at ProWrestlingTurbo.com. Tell them Sexy Thor sent you. I mean, I don't think you'll get anything if you tell them that Sexy Thor sent you, but I think they would appreciate it, and I would appreciate it, so let them know. So that's the card, at least so far, for Overdrive. And as the sort of final segment, and I know I've barely really talked about anything that's happened this week, or not usually covering as much as I normally do, but I'm trying to switch things up, and also I'm trying to come up with a weekly show on the fly. I mean, I could just go ahead and write everything down that happens, and then just tell you, and then end podcast and all that. But honestly, that kind of makes for a fucking boring show after a while, don't you think? Yeah. So, the final thing I want to talk about, because it's August 9th, so it is Alexa Bliss's birthday. And the thing I just want to get into and talk about with that, beforehand, just talking about more Lily Lucian things. And I was like, and they definitely minimized the amount of time that Alexa was on air last week, because we were getting some "We Want Wyatt" chants throughout the show, along with some CM Punk chants, of course. because Chicago. And yeah, so she just like came up on the screen. She was just like, ha ha ha, Eva Marie, you suck, Lily Lucian. Yeah. So what I'm talking about here as a sort of little thing to do on the show for Alexa's birthday is talk about her debut on the main roster, her debut match, which was pretty much, well, it was actually on her birthday on 2016, which landed on a Tuesday, and it was on SmackDown Live against Becky Lynch. And originally it was supposed to be Becky Lynch versus Eva Marie. So, you know, this is all tying together between the past and the present. I mean, of course, like I said, that 2021 is just turning out to be like a better 2016 for me personally, at least. I mean, shit, the Suicide Squad was even better than the one that was in 2016, for starters. And yeah, so it was her birthday. It was SmackDown Live. Eva Marie was supposed to face Becky Lynch, and Eva's sort of narrator person that somehow talks about her before her theme music plays went up, and Eva Marie didn't show up. And I think she had like suffered a quote unquote wardrobe malfunction like a week earlier. And then, yeah, her music played. Eva Marie didn't come out. Her music played again. Eva Marie didn't come out. Becky Lynch was just getting antsy in the ring. And then finally, Alexa Bliss's music hit. And the goddess herself made her main roster debut with a match against Becky Lynch. And I'm pretty sure I couldn't even tell you. I think it was this match that I watched that made me think like, you know what? This wrestling thing is a pretty fun thing to watch. I think I might want to watch some more of it. Because there was that Alexa Bliss collection, and I watched like the NXT stuff, and I was just like, all right, this is cool. And then I watched Alexa versus Becky, and I was just like, yeah, I could do this. I didn't imagine I'd be watching it and doing stuff involving wrestling as much as I am now, but hey, that's life, you know. Life in the Thunderverse. In this Thunder paradise. So, yeah, Alexa ended up beating Becky, and I was just like, huh. And this is just a fine example of how you can still get over with, even with losing, because I watched this, and even though I was overjoyed that Alexa, who was the only one I really knew, so she was already my favorite, was victorious, I still thought that Becky Lynch, she's really cool too. I think I might want to start following her as well. And boy, did that pay off in the following couple of years afterwards. And yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I think it's that match, or it's either their match at TLC for the SmackDown Women's Championship. But I think it was that match, because it was then where it was like, it was a non-title feud, because the SmackDown Women's Championship hadn't even been introduced yet, and nobody won it until Becky did at the Backlash pay-per-view the following month. And then from then on, for the most part, she and Alexa fought over it until Alexa won it that December at the TLC pay-per-view in that tables match. But yeah, that was pretty much just the quick story of Alexa's debut match on her birthday, August 9th, 2016. And it was following opening weekend of Suicide Squad, so, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And getting to watch that, even though it was like almost 2 years later, that's what got me to be like, hey, this whole WWE thing and this whole professional wrestling thing looks pretty neat. And you know what? For the most part, except for when I see fucking bullshit like releases and bad booking and all that, I don't regret that decision at all. I absolutely love watching this, love talking about this, even though my shitty planning of episodes might not make it look that way. But no, I do love doing this podcast, and I do love watching wrestling. I mean, for the love of God, I actually haven't missed watching a Raw since I started watching over 3 years ago, which is amazing because, you know, between the whole pandemic era performance center shows and just overall how crappy Raw has been most of the last 3 years. But then it gives me shit like Rawlanta, and it's just like, well, that's why you got me hooked. But anyways, that's just the whole thing to talk about since it is Alexa's birthday today. So, happy birthday, Alexa Bliss. The evil is yours. Still trying to figure out what exactly that means, but then I remember it's professional wrestling, and I really shouldn't really be thinking too hard about that kind of stuff. And with that said, that's the 1, 2, 3. Thanks for locking up with me on the Ring of Thunder. Kick butts, not nuts.
Welcome to Dr. Geek's Laboratory.
Hello everyone, Dr. Geek here with a shout out to all the scientists who worked tirelessly to bring a COVID-19 vaccine into reality. Let's face it, creating something of this magnitude is a miracle worthy of Dr. McCoy himself. And now, Dr. Geek needs you to do your part. Remember, each shot is one small step back to normal, one giant leap to putting the pandemic behind us. We can do this. For more information, visit vaccines.gov to find your nearest provider.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.